Edinburgh is the most haunted city in Europe. Which is why I'm not really surprised some paranormal weird stuff happened to me when I was there. Last year I was living in Edinburgh, in Scotland. If you've been there, you probably know that it's the most haunted city in Europe. A lot of its tourist attractions thrive on horror stories and paranormal occurrences, with the city's gruesome historical tours and ghost tours alike. I've got heaps of stories, but I'll just start off with the one that happened to me. I'm from Australia and had moved to Edinburgh on an exchange programme. The apartment I lucked out on was just off a place called the Grassmarket. The Grassmarket used to be, you guessed it, a market that sold grass and cattle. Before that, it was the town centre for all criminal trials that usually end in public hangings on Sunday morning. There was a time where around 35,000 people lived along the Royal Mile, which is a street, you guessed it, that is a mile long. Just down the road from the Grassmarket as well. Since the 14th century, just coming off the Black Plague, there were thousands upon thousands of people living in absolute squalor. Crime at an all-time high. They had all the witch trials as well. What I'm trying to get at here is that a lot of people died around my apartment, so I'm not really that surprised that some paranormal weird stuff started happening to me. I'm not even going to try and make scientific logic out of it. It doesn't come down to electricity problems or mind tricks or whatever. So I moved into a small old flat with two other English friends I made, Oliver and Tilda. By old, I'm saying that the building had been there for a few centuries. Oliver and Tilda's bedrooms were next to each other and the kitchen. Then down the hall there was the lounge, and my bedroom was at the other end of the hall next to the bathroom. It was a dingy building. The front door sometimes gets left open and junkies come to hang out in the stairwell. We're right on top of a run-down Chinese restaurant, and the landlord warned us about the rats. It was kind of gross, but it's the first time I've ever lived out of home, so I was just excited to be anywhere else, but there, really. Everything was fine the first few nights. I was having a great time with my roommates, going out and staying out late, and coming home early hours of the morning. It wasn't until I actually stayed at home at night that I noticed the weird shit started happening. The first night I was laying in bed watching a movie on my laptop around 1 a.m. that I saw the light from the bathroom flicking on and off under my door. I don't mean flickering, like someone was turning the light on. Then off. Then on. Then off. It kept going like that. At the time, I thought it was one of my roommates in there, so I didn't think much of it. Probably around 10 minutes later, the light stayed off, so I thought they'd gone to bed. The next day over breakfast, I asked my roommates who was in the bathroom flicking the switch, but both of them said it wasn't them. We all agreed that it was strange, and that we'd keep an eye out for other stuff like that. And if I'm being honest, I was pretty scared already. I really thought there was someone in there, and now that I think about it, there was. It just wasn't my roommates. From then on, we all started noticing strange little things. Other than lights turning on and off pretty frequently, although I never actually saw it happen. The floor would also creak, as if people were moving around in other rooms. It was an old place, I get that, but the floors were wooden and you can tell when it's someone's shoes knocking against the wood. That would happen too, but it wouldn't be any of us. I woke up one morning and heard footsteps, the floors creaking, and some banging noises in the kitchen. It sounded like one of my roommates were making breakfast or something. So I got up and walked down the hall to go say good morning. But as soon as I opened my bedroom door, the flat was quiet. I walked down to the kitchen and there was no one there. Neither of my roommates were in their bedrooms. I was completely alone. But I swear to you there was someone walking around before that. The silence I experienced in that moment was deafening. I stood frozen in the kitchen for a bit, shocked. Then I felt this hot breath on my neck, like someone was standing behind me. I couldn't move because I was terrified if I turned around there would be someone there staring right into my face. The heat brushed against the hairs on my shoulders and neck on the left side, making my hairs stand on end. This moment is when I would hide under the bed sheets, but I was stuck standing alone with nothing to hide under. I stood there for what felt like fucking hours, but really, I think it was less than 15 seconds. I had this wash of adrenaline come over me. What if there is a person behind me? I'm just standing here waiting for them to do something. So I made the first move. I lunged towards the counter, grabbed a knife and spun around. But no one was there. It sounds ridiculous and a little cliché, but at the time I genuinely thought that there was a person sneaking into our flat to fuck with us, but I checked, and the front door was always locked from the inside. I made an all-capital letters public announcement on our group text that I refused to be left alone in our apartment anymore. But it wasn't just when I was alone. This one time, me and Tilda were hanging out in her room, and we heard the creaking coming down the hall from my room. We both looked at each other and squealed. I immediately went to hide under the covers when we heard a male voice say, "Ha!" really loudly, like a yell, laughing at us. Just one, "Ha!" Looking at me with wide eyes, Tilda shouted, "Oliver!" Her lips quivering. We were both fucking terrified since we knew Oliver was out on a grinder meetup and we hadn't heard him come home. He wasn't planning on coming home. She texted Oliver asking where he was. We sat in terrified silence for his reply. A few minutes later, he replied with a picture of him in another guy's bedroom. We thought there maybe was one of the junkies in our house. Somehow they got in. Maybe Oliver left the door unlocked. Clutching onto each other, tiptoeing slowly towards the door, we quickly opened it and turned the hallway light on. It was empty. We walked over to the door and saw that it was locked from the inside. No one was in our apartment that we knew of. That night we slept with all the lights on in the same bed. It was fucked, but that wasn't the worst of it. Things were fine. For a while, I would have Oliver or Tilda wake me up if they were going to leave the flat without me. I did the same for Tilda. Oliver didn't really care, but that's because he hadn't really experienced any of it. Until one night, Oliver woke me up in a panic. He was completely pale, he was stammering as he told me that he woke up to this weird feeling that someone was in his room. He rolled over to see a figure standing over him in the dark. It was a big, looming figure standing on the left side of his bed, with no face or anything. It was just like a shadow of someone standing over him. Oliver didn't stare for long. He sprung up out of bed and came running down the hall to me. We went back and turned on all the lights and saw nothing. Oliver was the least skeptical of us now. He was the first one to see it. We all started sleeping with our doors open after that, just so we could make a quick escape if we felt we needed to. The final straw for us was when we were all at home, all asleep in our rooms respectively. I woke up in the middle of the night finding myself extremely cold. I was shivering as I wrapped myself further in my blanket. Just as I felt my body temperature starting to rise again, I felt this weight down on my chest, like someone was holding me down. It was this really intense pressure which made it hard for me to breathe. I was stuck, paralyzed until after about 20 seconds. The weight lifted. I thought it would have been sleep paralysis, but I was moving around before it happened. I just kind of let it go and went back to sleep. Except then again, I don't know how long later, I woke up to me being completely freezing again. I was still bunched up in my blanket. I hadn't moved from my position. Just as I opened my eyes, felt the pressure on my chest again, holding me down, restraining me with such force. It wasn't entirely painful, it was just forceful, you know? I felt as though I couldn't move out of the position I was in because someone was keeping me there, like all their body weight was pushing against my chest. I was worried that it might be something actually wrong with my heart or whatever, but it eventually went away and I was able to move again. I said to myself that if it happens again, I'll get up and wake the others. Just as I said that to myself, I felt the pressure on my head. It wasn't a headache, it was this external pressure, and they just held me there, like I couldn't leave. By this time, I was fucking freaking out, but I was stuck. I couldn't make a sound, I just had to wait it out. I don't know how long it was, but when they finally let go, I sat up and gasped for air. I seriously felt like my lungs had been completely sucked dry, like I was suffocating. Panting, I looked over to the door, about to make a run for Oliver's room when I saw it. The figure. It was a huge shadow, like a really tall, broad man in the doorway. I stopped, frozen, staring. I could see it. Even though it was trying to threaten us, I don't know, I couldn't tell if he really wanted to harm me. I felt scared, but not in danger, you know? I stared at him for a long time, waiting for something to happen, but he didn't disappear. He just stood there. Until I opened my mouth, my lips shaking, my words shivered along. "Leave us alone," I said. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I kept staring at the figure. And then it turned and walked away. This happened a few years ago when I was visiting Edinburgh, during autumn. The hotel room was modest with a small corner window. I remember pulling a chair over from the desk and standing on tiptoe to see outside. The view seemed to be overlooking the roof of the garden conservatory, but I was too short to see much more than that before I gave up and went to bed. I had checked in around 11:30 p.m, and by the time I finally lay down, it was about 2 a.m. I left the bathroom light on. It had a smoked glass door that gave the room a dim glow. After travelling for more than 12 hours from Asia with a layover in London, I fell asleep deeply and immediately, loud snoring and all. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke to a sound. It was a wailing, a long, drawn-out, mournful cry. Not quiet, not subtle. It was loud, as if amplified, like it was being played through a megaphone in the room. It felt impossible for something that loud to be real. My first thought was how much it resembled the exaggerated ghostly moans in old Scooby-Doo episodes, the kind villains used to fake hauntings. I was terrified, but also so exhausted that I didn't dare move. I didn't turn my head. I just scanned the ceiling and whatever I could see by rolling my eyes without shifting my body. I was honestly grateful I wasn't wearing my glasses. My prescription is minus 6.00, so without them, everything was a harmless blur. I pulled the thick comforter over my head and somehow fell back asleep faster than I can explain. I wasn't awake long enough to spiral into fear or rationalizations. There were no chills, no pressure on the bed, no shadowy figure or physical presence. Just the sound. I stayed in the same room for the next 2 nights, though my husband joined me the second night onward. Nothing else happened. I still tell this story because it felt real. I remember how real it felt. Yet at the same time, a part of me wants to dismiss it completely, because the idea of something truly haunting a modern hotel seems absurd. So I live in that strange space between believing and wanting not to believe. I used to have a friend who lived in a flat above a pub on the Cowgate. He also worked in the pub downstairs. There were a few strange things that happened there, but one of the creepiest was when one of the flatmates woke up to the glass of water beside his bed suddenly shattering right where it was sitting. No one touched it. It just broke. The flat had 2 vault rooms attached to it, similar to the underground vaults. One of them was set up as a band practice space, and we used it all the time. The other vault was identical in size and layout, but nobody ever went in there. There was no clear reason why. It just felt wrong, heavy, unwelcoming. Everyone avoided it without really needing to talk about it. In the vault we did use, a few people claimed they saw things slide or shift across the floor on their own. I never saw that myself, but I did believe them. Another friend woke up one morning with scratches all along her hip and thigh. She'd slept fully clothed, so there was no obvious explanation for how she got them. The living room had no door and opened into a wide hallway. Every time I sat in that living room, I had the constant sensation that someone else was there with us, like someone had just stepped out of the room and was about to walk back in. Several times I caught movement in my peripheral vision. It always looked like a shadow or figure passing through the hallway, heading toward the vaults and the bedroom where the glass had smashed. I didn't think much of it at the time. It felt more like noticing a presence rather than seeing something full on. Later, when talking to others who had stayed there, I found out they experienced the exact same thing. The hallway feeling, the sense that someone else was always there. Around that same period, the manager of the pub downstairs, who did not live in the flat, saw something on the CCTV one night. He'd closed up and happened to glance at the camera feed for the room where bands played. One of the staff was tidying up in there. The manager saw what looked like a figure or shape moving right beside them. When he went to check, the staff member had felt something too. It shook both of them up. I also had a friend who worked at the Lush on Princes Street. Their storage basement had even worse stories, and everyone there was sober while dealing with them, unlike the Cowgate flat half the time. A few employees refused to go down alone, and some eventually left because of how unsettling it was.